Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to my presentation, the honor presentation. My name is Dawson Lopez and today I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit more about training for performance. And this right here is just kind of the source that I use. So this is the book based on Powers and Howley, Exercise Physiology, Theory and Application to Fitness and Performance. So just a little bit of a physiological background, just kind of give you guys a little bit rundown and a little bit of a summary. What this is talking about is different levels of training to allow the body to adapt, to become stronger, to have a better VO2 max, kind of things like that. And so to understand that, we also have to understand what's going on. So key bioenergetic pathways, right? So what that is it's just talking about kind of the systems that we use in our body to allow us to adapt to certain levels of exercise, right? So here we have like the ATP production via the anaerobic phosphagen and the glycolytic systems, and then eventually we transition to the oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria. So what that's saying is, like, for instance, in quick exercises, right, we use a different form of energy, which is the ATP pace, right? That type of energy, because it's quick, it allows us to get it really fast so that we can start our exercise. Then it switches, right, and it goes into like more of like glycolysis and the glycolytic systems. And then eventually, like for long durations, long periods of exercise, that's when we switch to the oxidative phosphorylation that happens in the mitochondria. And over here is just a picture of muscle fiber and things like that. Just showing us that that's kind of what we're focusing on is building those during these performances. These are I just threw these up here actually because these are cardiovascular equations that if you go into like higher levels of this, like you might have to use those to kind of figure out different things. And so I thought it was a cool little addition there that you guys can look forward to maybe in future semesters. All right, so general principles of training. So we have overload, specificity, and then reversibility. So what we mean by overload is you're not going to get anywhere working out with light weights all the time, right? It's a great place to start, but your body eventually is going to adapt to that. And if you don't end up lifting heavier, you're just going to stay basically the same. You're not building your body, and so you have to overload, and that means you have to exert yourself. You have to really fight, right, against that tiredness that we sometimes feel when we're in the gym, especially myself when I'm lifting real heavy. I'm joking, I don't lift very heavy right now. But we have to overload our system, right? We have to overload our body in order to produce muscle. Specificity, that means that whatever we're targeting, that's what's going to be strong, right? That's what's going to strengthen. So, for instance, if I'm working on legs, my arms aren't going to get bigger, but my legs will, right? So whatever exercise we're doing, specifically we'll target certain muscles, certain parts of our body. That's what it means by that. Reversibility. This means that if we stop doing something, eventually we're going to lose it, right? Because we all know, we've had moments, at least myself, right, where I go to the gym, I'm really consistent for a long while, and then all of a sudden, maybe I stop going for a month, maybe sickness, vacations, all that stuff happens. And then when I try to go back, I'm not as strong. It's because whatever we do with our bodies can be reversed. So we have to make sure to continue doing the things that we're supposed to, right? To continue to strengthen our bodies and to build endurance. And so, right, this is designing like an endurance program, right? So we have interval training, which is basically, in short, it's spurts of something, right? So if I wanted to work on my overall endurance in running, I could do sprints. I sprint 100 meters, jog 100 meters, sprint 100 meters, jog 100 meters. Something along those lines is what interval training would be. So where you're doing things in high intense situations, and then you taper back, and you kind of relax a little bit more. And then there's also continuous tempo, right? So continuous tempo, what that's going to mean is that's when we pick a pace, such as cross-country runners, right? If you're a cross-country runner, you usually have a certain pace that you run at, and there's times where you might pick it up a little bit, but for the most part, you try to keep a pace in order to conserve energy until you reach a certain point, and then you're gonna have to exert that energy, right? So that's just what this is talking about, is just finding like a continuous pace that we can keep going and eventually exert ourselves doing it that way. So designing a resistance program, right? Kind of similar in some ways to the endurance program. However, it goes into a little bit different, right? So initial power gains, first 2 to 4 weeks, are primarily derived from elevated motor unit firing rate and synchronization. So what that is actually saying is we don't necessarily see it physically at first. It actually happens mentally. So our brain learns to adapt to what we're doing within the first 2 to 4 weeks, and we might feel stronger. Well, it's because our brain is actually acting on what we're doing to help us reproduce that more efficiently. So it helps our motor neurons fire off quicker, to activate more muscle fibers faster, so that we can actually reach our thresholds and our limits in a more efficient way over time, right? So the muscle protein synthesis, where it says mTOR activation, driving myofibril hypertrophy. What that just means is mTOR is a protein, right, that basically emits signals where our body then realizes, oh, I need to make more muscle fibers, or I need to expand these, right? And it's great because that means that we can get gains, as people would say. It means that we can build muscle, we can build endurance, we can build our cardio, things like that. That's what comes from this. Our body is adapting to what we're doing, right? That's how people can keep growing, and that's why we see, other than the steroids, like some of these bodybuilders who are natural, right? That's what's happening, is this is being activated in their bodies to allow them to continue to grow. Okay, so special training considerations. So there's 3 different categories here, and I'll explain these a little bit. So tapering, right? What tapering means is if you have a big event coming up, such as, oh, I've been training for a marathon, the week before a marathon, or even for a couple days before the marathon, you need to taper your exercises back. Let your body replenish itself so that you're ready for the event that you're going to. So for instance, if I'm running 2 to 3 times a week training for a marathon, and I'm running 25 miles for all 3 of those days, right? I still want to reach kind of that maximum, but I just don't want to do it as often as I was. I want to give my body time to restore itself so that it's prepared for the event that I've been training for. Overtraining, this is bad. We don't want to overtrain. Our body needs time to rest. It needs time to recuperate, which means if I'm going to the gym 7 times a week, every day, right? The problem with that is my body doesn't have a day of recovery. It doesn't have a chance to just relax, rebuild, restructure. And so what happens is we actually raise our stress levels, right? We become overexhausted, overworked, and that has the reverse effect. That actually can lead to injuries. It can lead to problems. Even in our training itself, we could get weaker because we're not getting as much sleep. We're not getting as much replenished time. Our muscles are breaking down faster than they can actually rebuild. And then genetic limits. We also got to realize, like, when we're making programs, we have got to tether a program based on genetics. So everybody has a different level of fitness out the gate. Those routines and programs need to fit what that individual needs, including myself, right? If I just came off of a surgery and it was a shoulder surgery, I tore one of my tendons or one of my ligaments, muscles, whatever it is, right? If that happens and I have it repaired and I just go in and try and put 345s on each side, because that's typically what I do, I probably wouldn't be able to get it up, right? So that's because my body at that time is not able to withstand that. There's genetic differences, there's surgical differences. We have to be aware of those things when we're making a program for somebody. Okay, current research. So this is HIIT versus MICT. So just to give you kind of a little bit of an introduction to this, I'm not going to go too far into it. This is basically just saying that a HIIT program allows us to produce more VO2 max faster. So it basically allows us to adapt quicker. It allows us to become stronger quicker. And research has shown that it typically works better in the long run. This one, right, the MICT, what that basically is it's just saying it still works. It's more of a moderate type of exercise. So that's what it kind of stands for, is like a moderate interval training. And you just increase it moderately. You know, you kind of keep things a little bit more on the easy side, but you're still going to make progress, right? Because any form of training, as opposed to no training, is going to make progress. High interval training, right, which is the HIIT, that is going to allow us to do, again, high intensity, super fast in intervals, and it's going to allow us to increase our endurance, our cardiovascular endurance, our muscular endurance, and our VO2 max. So that's kind of what this is going into. Again, I'm not going to go too much into it. If you do have more questions, though, I can always send you some more articles that you can read, because it is a very interesting topic. Okay, velocity-based training. So again, what this is there's low fatigue and high fatigue. And what this means is it just, at 10%, right, we would watch an individual lifting weights. And this is using dumbbells, barbells, anything of that sort that has weight that is hard to push quick. So we would allow somebody to do squats, and we want to see how many squats they can do. We let them go for as long as they can until they have a 10% decrease in tempo or timing, right? So let's say I'm doing 50 squats with 45s on each side. I'm going down, and I continue to go down just like this, right? And I'm keeping the same tempo. The moment that tempo decreases by 10%, that's when we would stop, and we would base a program of training off of that 10% fatigue level. High fatigue, 20%, it's just the exact same thing, except instead of stopping at 10%, we go to 20%. So they can still continue doing those squats, right? They're going up and down just like this. Then all of a sudden they're about a 10% decrease in speed. And then all of a sudden they get to 20%. That's when we would stop the training, and we would base a training program off of their fatigue level of 20%. So again, very interesting level of training, which is really cool to kind of dive deep into. So practical application. What would this be good in? What situation? Who would this be good for? Well, this is great for athletes, great for clinicians, such as physical therapists, athletic trainers. This is great for them. It's great for strength and conditioning coaches, because this allows us to see different forms of training, right? This allows us to find a training method and a training program that fits what we desire out of a program, out of a patient, or out of, again, an athlete. So, target population, of course, athletes and clinical. This is great for track and field athletes. It's great for any of the long jump events, right? Things like that. It's great for football players, soccer players. It's great for anybody in sports that needs a lot of endurance and needs a lot of strength, right? So again, the practitioners, that's a strength coach, an athletic trainer, a physical therapist, even exercise physiologists. This is great for them, because this is how they get information to study and figure out, okay, what can we do to try and increase this certain percentage of VO2 max without hurting or damaging the patient, the athlete, or the person taking the survey, right? And so this is just a little bit of a summary. So we went over kind of the bioenergetic adaptations, training pathways, they change with the challenge. So they have to activate different ATP sources depending on time, so endurance levels, training levels, intensity levels. Those things will change the ATP production systems. Specificity directs outcome, right? So that was just talking about, again, we need to be specific about what muscles and what body part we're targeting. We need to be specific. Are we wanting to do more of an endurance program? Is it more of a strength program? Is this for a runner? Is this for a football player? Things like that. Specificity is important in training our bodies. Autoregulation and fatigue, right? So we got to make sure we're regulating ourselves. We understand like what our body can handle, what it can't handle, what our fatigue levels are, and not overdoing it. Again, if you overdo it for too long, it becomes harmful to the body. It becomes harmful in progress, and eventually you'll plateau, or even worse, you'll get injured. And then clinical alignment. So again, we just kind of talked about where this applies in the field, in what we're studying. And again, there's so many applications, and it's so wonderful to see kind of like where all of this fits in as a clinician and as a practicer. And so these are just a couple of the quiz questions. I'm going to go through these quick. That way you guys don't see the answer. So if I do present in class, you guys have a chance to answer it. But which principle states adaptation is specific to active fibers? A, B, or C? Overload, specificity, reversibility, right? And so these are just a couple of examples. I'll wait to do this section when I actually have an audience that can answer and I'm not just talking to you guys electronically. And again, here's just a couple more questions for you guys just to kind of go over. And right here are my sources. So again, I didn't cover a lot of the topics as far in depth, because the cool thing is if I do get to present, hopefully I get a little bit more time to do that with you guys. If you guys are interested in training programs or different lifting styles, things like that, please reach out to me, comment below, and I can send you guys a couple more things of research that I did in order to prepare for this, kind of more ideas on HIIT, MICT training. There's also different lifting versions that I've been studying as well. So these again are some of the sources of the pictures that I used, as well as some sources on the statistics and things. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And again, train the best that you can.